Today we're going to talk about gaming as an adult. When I was a kid, I didn't really think of genres or anything like that. All I was doing was picking up a game, playing it, and seeing if it clicked with me. But this was kind of me experimenting to find out what worked for me. You also have unlimited time as a kid, or that's what it felt like at least. Whereas now, you have other things to do, responsibilities, priorities. So I feel like when you're a kid, you have the flexibility to build your life around your video games. Whereas as an adult, it's the opposite. You have to build your video games around your life. And this really impacts the kind of games you can play, because as a kid, if you're trying to play a game that takes, for example, 2 or 3 hours to get into, you have the available time to do that. Whereas nowadays, I haven't really got the time to sit down and play an RPG for 3 or 4 hours. That has to wait to the weekend. And even then, sometimes I have responsibilities that I have to go and do during that time. Now, that's not to say that I don't like long sessions of video games. I absolutely love it, but it's just not a possibility sometimes. Especially in the evenings, for example, after work, you've got a few hours to yourself. I've still got to go to the gym, for example. I've still got to cook dinner. I didn't have to do that when I was a kid. And there's other things that I need to work on, I need to do. So once I've got all of my responsibilities out of the way, maybe I'll have enough time to chill out and enjoy a little bit of video games. What we are referring to here is time, guilt, and responsibilities or priorities. But another thing that I think is quite interesting is that, as with everything, not just video games, but in life generally, the types of things that we like change. And that includes the types of games that we play. I remember one of the first games I ever played was Tekken, and that was on PlayStation 1. Or, for example, Pokemon on my Game Boy Color. And I absolutely loved those games, and I can still go back and feel nostalgic when I play them. But there is no way I would be picking up a Pokemon game nowadays. And that's not to say that there's people in their 30s that are not doing that there's no problems with doing that. It's just, for me personally, it's not the kind of game that I want to play now. And likewise for Tekken. I know, for example, the latest Tekken is Tekken 8. I honestly can't think of anything more boring to do. I don't want to play Tekken. But I want to play the original Tekken. In fact, the first 3, Tekken 1, 2, and 3, I can go back to those and I can really enjoy them. Am I good at them? Definitely not. But that goes back to the previous video I made about being good at video games. Is it really that important? And playing games on easy, basically. And also there's certain styles within video games. It's not even just types or genres. We're talking, for example, there's some games that are incredibly grindy. For example, RuneScape. I remember as a kid playing so much RuneScape, and I absolutely loved it. And if I'm honest, if I had the time now, I would still like to play it. But I just don't have the time, because a grindy game requires you to spend a lot of time playing them. And there's no way I can imagine myself sitting at a computer, even if it takes maybe a few seconds of my time to keep clicking on something, to play long sessions of video games. Another thing that's really interesting is if you go back to old games, you sometimes forget how clunky they can be. I play newer games and I'm amazed by how smooth they are, especially after playing an old school game, maybe a game that I've had in my cupboard for ages, a PS1 game or something like that. Games have come a long way, and we don't appreciate how good they are now until you go back and you play some of the old classics. Not to say that they're bad, it's just the feeling is not the same. There's not as much fluidity when you're playing. And still on the topic of the types of games that we play, the genres, one massive aspect that I hadn't really considered until now, when I was a kid, I wasn't really interested in the stories, if I'm honest. Whereas now, that's one of the biggest focuses that I have in video games. Don't get me wrong, I still absolutely love gameplay side of things. But when I was a kid, I was skipping the dialogue. I didn't care about what the people were saying. This was my chill out time. Why am I going to sit and read? And actually, this is something more personal for me. I've never really been into reading books. And the day that I figured out that I could listen to an audiobook was mind-blowing. It's like listening to a podcast. Anyway, this is getting slightly off topic, but the point that I'm trying to make is our habits shift as we get older. Things change. Something that's very similar to what I was talking about last week with the ease of games. So I like to play games on easy, but you don't really have that selection if you're playing multiplayer games. When I was very young, multiplayer didn't really exist. Maybe you would get together with your friends, and that's what we used to do, and play together. And that was your multiplayer. We were all playing on one console. Then when I was a teenager, I remember that's when it really took off. I had my first Xbox 360, for example, and I was playing games online. I remember Call of Duty, for example, Halo, the classics. And I was really competitive. as a teenager. And I think by the time I reached 18 years old or so, I felt myself feeling more frustrated than excited about playing video games. And that's when the mindset started to shift, I think. Now, I'm 32 years old, and a long time ago I accepted that I'm never going to be the best at video games. And so I really had to reflect on, why do I continue to play them, and why do I still feel excited when I pick up a new game? And it's because it's a form of entertainment. It's something to enjoy. And so as an older gamer, you have to reflect a bit more as to why you're doing this. I think as a kid, you've got all of the time in the world, so you just kind of do what you want to do. And you feel drawn to it, but you don't have to question it. Whereas when you're an adult, you really have to think, why am I doing this? And I remember going through this difficult time actually, where I was thinking about video games, is it a waste of time? And maybe this is another question for another time. I can give you the answer very simply, and it's not a waste of time, because it's a form of entertainment. But not only that, it can be very good for your mental health. These are things you're not thinking about as a kid. You're not thinking about whether you're wasting your time playing video games or whether this is good for your mental health. We also have a lot more awareness now about mental health than we did, for example, when I was a kid in the 90s or the noughties. And actually that leads me into the next topic, which is mental health. Something we consider as adults is, I need time just to chill and reflect. You don't have that as a kid. You have less stresses in your life. And one of my favorite activities is getting into a Zen zone. It's literally me blocking out everything around me and just enjoying the moment in a video game. One of the best things I think I purchased for my gaming console was a headset, because not only is it for immersion, but it also allows you to get into that flow state. As you can see here, I'm just playing Horizon Zero Dawn, and I've got masses into it. I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to playing the second one. But interestingly, and this is reflecting back to what we were just saying before, I played this game as the first game I had on PS4. Now, I wasn't a little kid when I played this. I can't remember exactly when it was. It was the first time Horizon Zero Dawn came out, basically. And if I'm honest, I didn't really pay attention much to the story. I think it slightly went over my head. Maybe it was because of the environment I was in at the time. I was studying. I kind of just wanted a game to chill out, and I was maybe looking for a different type of game. But now I really have delved into the story a bit more and listened to the characters and the side quests and really got myself involved with the story, I guess. And the other aspect that I have really enjoyed this time as well is the upgrading system. For example, going hunting for the different parts that you need in order to upgrade your bow or anything else within the game, which is it's just been good fun, basically. As a kid, there's no way I would have read all the dialogue that I did or paid attention to the stories. And by the way, both of these are completely valid. Like, if you're someone who doesn't want to hear any stories and just wants pure gameplay, there is absolutely no problem with that. I have friends that just play online, for example, as I've mentioned before. I think that we need to appreciate that people just like different things. And another thing, when I was a kid, a lot of the time, we were playing video games to pass the time or kill the time, really. Now, everything feels a bit more intentional. And I think that video gaming is a really good way to bond with someone. I remember as a kid, for example, I would only exclusively play with my friends, and I didn't really play with my parents or anything like that. They could not understand why someone would want to pass their time playing video games. But also during the 90s and 2000s, it was during a time when people really looked down on video games. Like, it caused violence and all this stuff. We've seen all this stuff in the media, which is just simply not true. Whereas now, I remember, for example, very recently playing video games with my girlfriend and enjoying that experience for what it is. It can also be a little bit frustrating because you have different levels, right? Like, I've been playing video games for as long as I can remember. My girlfriend, on the other hand, she's only played a few hours of video games in her entire life. So you have to appreciate that people have different perspectives of what they want from a video game. And that's absolutely fine. But as a kid, you would only really be playing with other people who really want to push themselves in their video games. Or at least that's how I felt. When I was a kid, as you can imagine, I didn't have lots of money to buy all of the video games. I was reliant on my parents. And so when there was a game that you wanted, you was asked for it, and then you'd wait for your birthday or you'd wait for Christmas and you'd get that game. Now look at the reverse of this. Nowadays, I can go out and buy whatever game I want. And if I'm honest, I have a bit of a collection, to the point where I actually created a spreadsheet. where I put all of the games that I have bought or want, and I've put them in a list. And I even created this, I created a random number generator so that I know what my next game's going to be. And I just put a numbered list on the side, and whatever the number lands on is the game that I play. It's not something that I always do. Sometimes I manually select them myself. But it literally got to that point where I just had too many games and not enough time to play them. If you'd have told me as a kid that that's the problem I would have, I would have not even been able to imagine what that would be like. But as I'm talking right now, I'm literally looking at the stack of physical games that I have, which doesn't even come close to the number of digital games that I have. And another thing that I do is I purchase DLCs for video games before I complete them. I really sometimes regret doing this because by the time I get to the end of the video game, I'm burnt out from it and want to move on to the next one. As a kid, you bought the game and that was it, really. I'm talking, when I was a kid, not when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, there was DLC and occasionally I would buy it. But we live in a world now where there's microtransactions and all this kind of stuff, which personally I'm not a fan of. But I understand that this is something that exists now. Lots of people do enjoy that part of video gaming. Sometimes I do feel at the stage that I'm at now in my life, I am almost chasing the nostalgia for what I had when I was a kid. And I think this is where a lot of remasters come in. We play remasters, I think, to have that same feeling we once had. I think also something has to be said for the quality of video games nowadays. Yes, the graphics have improved, but there's so many other aspects to video games that I think have kind of stagnated, to be honest. I think, for example, recently we had the success of Expedition 33, which has done extremely well. I think it was like 9 awards it's got, which is absolutely phenomenal. And this is an example of a video game company which has not only excelled at what they've done, but they've shown to the AAA industry that you don't need a massive budget and that innovation, trying new things out, is a good thing. I think as a kid, we had so many games that were so different and people were just trying things. And that's what made them so brilliant. They were so different, so diverse. And nowadays, a lot of games feel very similar. They know what works and what doesn't work. And so they go with the same thing. Like what they've done is they've plugged a bunch of key concepts and ideas into a machine, and some sort of AI has popped out the perfect video game that will sell. And what you need to understand is that's not how the video game industry works or should work. People love stories. People love feeling like they're improving as they're playing their video games. People also do like good graphics, but you don't need good graphics in order to sell well. As a kid, it was mostly your imagination that was coming up with how good the video games were. Final Fantasy VII, for example, the original, phenomenal game. But if you go back and play that game, the graphics are not phenomenal. They were phenomenal for the time, but to today's standards, they are certainly not anything to write home about. And actually, there's a lot of parts in that game that are not intuitive. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad game by any means. It's incredible for its time, and it's one of my favorite games of all time. But something must be said. If you compare the original Final Fantasy VII to Final Fantasy VII Remake and Rebirth, the graphics clearly have changed a lot. But when I was a kid, I was imagining the graphics of the new trilogy in the old game. And it's the same across the board with Tekken, for example. If I go back and play the original Tekken, I can see that the graphics aren't that good. But it didn't matter to me as a kid because I was using my imagination. I think sometimes as adults, we let that part of us go. We don't really think about how good something looks because it's a given. We don't have to use our imaginations. But also, it's that childlike wonder that I think video games give us. It's almost like a window for us to explore those ideas once more. And this is something special, I think. Video games really can give you that sense of childlike wonder. But I remember trying to perfect the perfect combo when I was a kid, for example, or do my absolute best in terms of the time trials available to me. But honestly, those are my worst parts of video games now. I don't want to learn a combo. I don't want to improve my time. I just want to chill out and play. Thankfully, I can do that. But for example, let's imagine there's something that I want to unlock in the video game and I need to beat a time trial in order to obtain it. I always feel myself sighing because I think to myself, oh, I've got to put myself through that to unlock this thing that I need in the game, so I'll just get it over and done with. There's not the feeling as excitement as I did when I was a kid. But yeah, the video gaming industry has changed. It's changed a lot. When I was a kid, we used to play and it really felt like everyone involved, those who created the video game, were just having fun. And that's not a given nowadays. The industry is so large and there's so much money involved that shareholders are basically dictating the sort of video games that we get, which I think is a bit of a shame. But that doesn't mean that there isn't fun to be had out there. It just means that the lens is a lot bigger. When I was a kid, you picked up a game, you tried it out, and you made your own judgment. Nowadays, there's all these reviews that will tell you that a game's good or bad, which isn't always true either, by the way. Sometimes you pick up a game and you absolutely love it, and then you see the review and it turns out that people were not liking it as much. I can think from the top of my head, Far Cry Primal was my absolute favorite Far Cry. I absolutely loved it. More than anything, the upgrading, the world, but it was just such an interesting concept and such an interesting idea. And yet online everyone was saying it's the same map as Far Cry 4. And I loved Far Cry 4, but I prefer Far Cry Primal. But if I'd have listened to reviews before playing it, maybe I would have had a different experience. We didn't have that as a kid. And you know what? I think the beautiful thing about video games, just because you've grown up, doesn't mean they need to. It means that you can explore a part of your life that may have happened a long time ago, but you can turn that old PlayStation 1 on, or turn your Game Boy Color, play your Pokemon game, and just get lost in a world that for you at one point used to be the most important thing, especially in a world like we live in today, where there's so much stress, so much going on. Just to take a step back and appreciate a time a little bit simpler, a little bit more relaxed. Thank you for watching this week's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And check out this video here. My video last week did a lot better than I thought it would. So thanks very much for that. And I'm kind of just doing this as a bit of fun on the side. So if you like this video, let me know. Thanks.